Welcome to the 3 Degrees of Freedom podcast, where we explore lifestyle engineering with our expert guests to bring you in alignment with your own 3 degrees of freedom, location, time, and financial independence. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today, we have got Mr. Scott White on the show. How are you, Scott?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Fantastic. For those who don't know Scott, I'm really looking forward to this episode because in this episode, we're going to be talking about something that is universal to us all. The fact that life is just simply too short sometimes. Scott White is known as the Life is Too Short guy and is the CEO and chairman of a public real estate company and has completed an impressive Ironman triathlon and 15 marathons. He's a former Wall Street investment banker turned entrepreneur and business builder. And with his never-ending energy, Scott is on a mission to make the world a happier place, one smile at a time. And he's married to his high school sweetheart, and together they are passionate about Rutgers Sports, which is interesting. We'll touch on that in just a little bit. And Scott's superpower is making the world a happier place, and he does this through his speaking platform and his Life is Too Short guy philosophy, which he discusses in his book, and we'll explore all of these things later on. So, Scott, once again, welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you on.
I am so grateful to be here. Thank you for the invite, Derek.
Of course. So let's just jump right in. As our show is about the 3 degrees of freedom, time freedom, location freedom, financial freedom. I want to talk a little bit about your philosophy, where you stand right now with those 3 degrees of freedom. Are you locationally independent, financially free, time free, or is it even important to you? And then the second part of the question is, how does that life is too short philosophy fit into those 3 degrees of freedom and your growth in the future?
No doubt the philosophy fits. So we'll go there in a minute. I just had to jump on that because I was pretty excited. It was almost like a softball that you teed up for me. But we'll start with, yes, at the moment, so my day job, so to speak, is I am the chairman and CEO of a public company. My hobby, interest, energy level in part is dedicated to a student housing development company that I'm a founding partner of. And my passion is making the world happier one smile at a time. I released my book earlier this year. And as you said, I'm out doing a speaking tour and speaking platform. With that as my life construct, yes, I have freedom of location, I have freedom of time, and I have financial freedom within reason. So obviously I have commitments, but generally I would say yes to all 3 of those. And all 3 of those tie immensely well with the philosophy. So the philosophy, which I call the Life is Too Short guy philosophy, or LITSIG, has 10 principles. And I'm not going to jump into all of them right now because that'll take up the whole podcast. But so many of the themes are very common. So I talk about happiness, gratefulness, living in the moment, taking risks is part of this LITSIG philosophy, doing what you love. The underlying theme, the underlying string, I would say, is that life is too short. We only have so many minutes in our life. And I do a little bit of math that I can walk you through. There aren't that many minutes. When you really boil it down, what are you doing with those minutes? So now let's circle right back. If you don't have freedom with your time to choose, that's horrible. That is really unfortunate. And I tell people, I often get a lot of questions about how do you prioritize? How do you juggle? How do you get it all done? And I spin it back on people because there isn't a magic formula. Derek, there isn't. Here is exactly how I do it. And here the prioritization. What I tell people is be thoughtful and deliberate about how you use your minutes, which gets to your freedom of time. So I choose to join you on this wonderful call today. I choose to work the roles I am working. I choose to write a book and go out and speak and spread this happiness message around the world. I choose, and I can keep going through the I chooses, but you get the point. So by definition, one of the principles in the Life is Too Short guy is called minutes matter. That is perfectly aligned with what you're saying, freedom of how you use your time. Freedom of location or freedom to live or be wherever you want. I'd say that's a little bit less of a core principle. However, one of the principles is to find happiness doing what you love, where you love, and with whom you love. So by definition, if you're in a place and you're living in a place where you're not loving it, today's the day to make that decision to move, like literally today. And I don't even say that figuratively, Derek, because one of my my passions as I explain this to people is in the book, I tell a number of stories of people that have had major setbacks, major aha moments, epiphanies, that unfortunate cancer diagnosis, that unfortunate catastrophic injury, that unfortunate death of a loved one. You know what? Today is your aha moment. You don't have to wait for that. In fact, don't wait for that. So if you don't love what you're doing, you don't love where you're living, you don't have freedom to choose what you're doing, today's the day to make a decision to change that.
I love this. The whole point of why I put this podcast together is to find the intentionality for people to be in alignment with who you are as an individual and understand, if you had the choices, what would you do with them?
Right.
How would you do that? Right. And I think, like you said, it fits perfectly into the life is too short philosophy, because how you choose to live your life moment to moment. Yes, obviously, sometimes people don't have the luxury of being able to do exactly what they want to do in every moment at every point in time, because you have commitments, you've got kids, potentially, you have work, all these things. But I don't see why you couldn't set the sail of your boat, so to speak, in the direction that you want it to go later on. So even though you may not be, you're sacrificing right now, you can live the life is too short philosophy while setting yourself up for that. Like, you can live it by saying, I'm making these sacrifices consciously because in the future, this is where it's eventually going to go. Or am
Well
I
said.
overstepping here? Is that something that maybe you
No,
guys
that's
talk
exactly
about
right.
in the book?
That's exactly right. So one of the constructs of Minutes Matter, so one of the real goals of the book is to give people actionable, specific tools. So the book is not, and I emphasize this, it's not an academic book. It's not a theoretical professor at some Ivy League school saying, here's what could or should make you happy. This is day-to-day blocking and tackling, living in the moment. So what do I mean by that? What's a real example? In the book, Derek, I provide a goals grid. And I share my goals grid. And my goals grid is going to be different than your goals grid. But my goals grid across the top has 4 areas of my life that are important to me: my family, my physical, my work, and my personal life. So 4 areas: family, work, personal, physical. And then down the side, I list off tomorrow, this month, this year, and long term. And long term could be 3 years, it could be 30 years. But getting back to the intentionality, maybe I can't do everything I want to do today because, again, there are only so many minutes in the day. Time is a finite commodity. But if I lay out a plan saying, all right, tomorrow I'm going to do X, next week I want to do Y, over the next year I'm going to do Z, and at some point in my life, ideally, I give it a stronger parameter. And some point in my life is one of those nebulous, maybe I'll get to it, maybe I won't. But 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, I'll do A. So as you point out, as you said, maybe there's certain sacrifices you need to make today, but with a plan of going where you want to go, and ideally a plan of getting there as fast as possible. Don't delay what you truly want to do. That's one of the messages in the book, because tomorrow's not guaranteed. The last principle, I said there are 10 principles. The last principle is live today. Don't wait for tomorrow. Because again, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Make the most of today.
Yeah. Again, can't underscore this even more than what you already have. This is great because it's very important to be able to have that in mind, because I've been finding that as I have been being more intentional about where I want to head, the ironic thing is that things happen faster than you think, because your brain and your network and your support system is way more powerful than you could ever imagine. All it takes for you is to put it out there, right? Whether it's in your head or whether it's out in your network. And it just takes one person to change your life. And for you listeners, that one person could be Scott, could be me.
I hope so. I hope so.
Could be someone else. Exactly. Could be someone else that you run into. And so I think that's just beautifully said. And I think that your philosophy and your book has got to be a fantastic resource for people. Now, let's back up just a little bit. I want to hear a little bit more about where this philosophy came from. It sounds like you've been doing a lot of thinking about this. Can you talk about, maybe it happened from your transition from investment banking to entrepreneurism and somewhere along the way you picked this up, but can you give us some background as to where you got this life is too short guy brand and philosophy in your psyche and in your makeup?
So the philosophy itself evolved over the course of my life. There wasn't a day or a moment in time or all of a sudden I was like, pow, here it is. Here's my life philosophy. It evolved. I've generally been a high energy, positive, happy person probably all my life, or at least as long as I can remember. But there's no doubt it evolved. I would say there were four big moments, salient moments that I talk about in the book that really had meaningful impacts on me, steered me in a new direction. And they really define one of the things that people have said to me as I've written this book is, oh, you're a really happy guy, but what do you tell somebody that's, depressed, dealing with loss of a job, dealing with whatever the case may be? And my answer is we all deal with that. Okay. We all deal with that. And here are the four things that I've dealt with in my life that really had a meaningful impact on me. I start the book, the very first pages, I talk about I was 10 years old and I was doing a project around the house with my dad. He cut his finger. My dad then went to the hospital. Again, I'm 10 years old. I go to sleep and my mom comes running in the room in the middle of the night that dad had a heart attack at the hospital. 10 years old in the 1980s. He then went on and had triple bypass surgery, which again, in 1984, was he had to fly to across the country to a specialist. Very few people that did it. Anyway, he survived, thank God, but there's no doubt in my mind that had a meaningful early impact on me. Then you fast forward, and my dad did pass away about 17 years ago, and the loss of a parent is a major milestone, an event that opens your eyes to say, wow, death has really now come close. It's time for you to make sure you're living your very best life. And shortly after that, I was a close-up witness to the events of 9/11. I was downtown Manhattan working, as you said before. I was an investment banker, and I walked by the World Trade Center probably 20 to 30 minutes before the first plane crashed. I heard the first plane crash. I watched the second plane crash. I watched the towers fall. I lived in that area for the following weeks, and there's no doubt that had a meaningful impact on me. And then finally, the fourth, my mom passed away about 6 years ago. So both my parents died at relatively young ages. And those four events, there's no doubt, had a meaningful impact on my philosophy and who I am today.
That's right. And plus, I'm assuming that the skills that you picked up from entrepreneurism and investment banking got the gears thinking, right? Man, what am I doing this for? Because I'm sure you have kids and a family at home. So can we talk about that aspect real quick before we jump into some of your superpower? I want to ask you, how has your family changed or informed you and your life right now into this philosophy or into who you are as a person?
So I'm going to spin the question a tiny bit and talk to you a little bit about how my philosophy about family has changed and tie it directly to your question on investment banking, entrepreneurship. So 24 years ago, I started as an entry-level investment banker. And I will tell you that my mission in life was to be the king of Wall Street. I was gonna outwork anybody. I had this belief that I probably wasn't smarter than anybody, but I could out hustle them. I could outwork them. And I will tell you, years later, 15, 20 years later, I met people that I started with that reminded me, that said that I always could outwork people. I always could I was willing to put in that time. So work was my number 1, 2, and 3 priorities. I was already married to my high school sweetheart, and she was bought in and very supportive, but I lived an investment banker life. I'd go in and work days without going home. I'd come home, shower, go back, sleep at my desk. It was a crazy life. And I'll tell you, the events of 9/11 sort of changed that. So I was a couple of years into investment banking, and the day before 9/11, I would have told you that I'll have kids at some point in time. I'm young. I have my whole life ahead of me. And if I'm going to be the king of Wall Street, I got to keep working. About, 13 months later, after 9/11, I had my first child, and my daughter now is 20 years old and directly correlated to the events of that day. That changed my perspective. It changed my philosophy. And then in the ensuing years, as I had a second child and I climbed the corporate ladder, so to speak, I certainly switched my priorities in terms of where I was spending my minutes. Remember, I said before, minutes are precious and how to use them. And family became much more important to me. And then as I went on a more entrepreneurial journey, which, as you pointed out before, or inferred, gives you greater flexibility of time, greater flexibility of location. There's no doubt I've been very fortunate, very blessed that, 10 years ago, I left Wall Street and went on a bit of an entrepreneurial journey that has given me complete flexibility of time and flexibility of complete's an exaggeration, as you know, we all have commitments, as you said, but
Yeah.
gave me substantial flexibility of time, substantial flexibility of location, and gave me the opportunity to be there. And I was the kids' coaches on the soccer field, and I was in the classroom, and I was there for all the major events, and that became a big priority for me.
I just have to put myself in your wife's shoes. Obviously, you went through
You
4
poor
major
thing.
life events. Right? No, I don't think so. I'm just no, because what I'm saying is, from the perspective of your wife, obviously she's seen you since you were just trying to learn yourself. We all are when we're in high school, right?
Yep.
To going through this process of being, I'm going to be the king of Wall Street, and then essentially turning on a dime in the perspective of an entire human lifetime,
Sure.
to going to, I want kids now. This is not what I want. What's really important to me is the minutes. Those matter to me. I'm just curious, like, how your wife and at the time you didn't have, I don't think you had much more of a family. It was just you and your wife at the time, but maybe your extended family or some other people, your friends, your network that knew you. What happened when you made that change? Did your wife like that change, or just talk a little bit about that transition in mindset?
So I'd say a few things. One, I'm very blessed and fortunate that my wife and I have been together since I'm 16 years old. So to a certain degree, we've clearly grown together. We didn't really have personas or identities in a big way. Again, going back to who you are at 16, and we blend them together. In fact, I'd say we grew our identities together. So she totally gets me. I get her. You're right. We've both evolved, right? We both changed over the course of a life. She certainly was prepared to have a family before I was, but was incredibly supportive of my work commitment, and continues to be supportive of a lot of things that I work on. One of the things that I'm so excited about the book, which I keep referring to, is we've been partners on the book. I wrote it. The genesis of the idea for the book came from her. She came up with the original title and the concept. And at this moment, she and I work very closely on it. I have a speaking platform, and she does a lot with me on scheduling, speaking, and on marketing, and on everything associated with the books. I'm very fortunate, and I would say it's probably the greatest gift I have in my life is my relationship with my wife.
Yeah, I second you there. In my life, I would say that almost all of my success can be attributed to one major decision, and that was the decision to marry my wife. Just because so much growth has come from that, because she came from an entrepreneurial background, and she also came from a perspective of an open-mindedness. And I was
Right.
very closed-minded back before I met my wife. I was very much an engineer type, and I thought I had all the answers and I knew what I needed to do. But by opening my mind and becoming a more positive person, a more happier person, I was able to start making changes in my life of things that I really wanted. And sometimes it's all about awareness, right? If you're so closed-minded, you're not aware of anything, including what your own needs are.
Right.
And that decision, that's why I asked about your spouse, because a spouse is an untapped form of wisdom for everyone out there, because they know you in most cases more than you know yourself. And so I just encourage people to deepen your relationship with your spouse and have those deep conversations, those maybe that are tough conversations. And so that's why I wanted to ask you about how your family's helped you with the mindset. And it sounds like you guys have been in lockstep this whole time. And so I love that. I'd love to see that. Let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about making the world a happier place. I'm not surprised, as being the life is too short guy. That's your superpower. I think they have both developed kind of hand in hand. But could you talk a little bit about how you live this day to day? Just a couple of examples or things that pop into mind when you think about making the world a better place.
Well, it starts with the book, right? The book was intended
Yeah.
to, years ago, people said to me, it would be great if we could package up your attitude and your positivity and your energy. And then I realized the book was that package. Then you could elongate that. And now I'm out doing a lot of company keynotes and workshops to try to share these principles. And the principles are in a lot of cases so simple that it's an easy way for people to walk away from hearing me, from reading the book, and implementing these tools and principles and making the world a happier place. For me personally, it's such little things. It's smiling at people. It's talking to strangers. It's waking up with the right attitude. It's random acts of kindness. These are all simple concepts that as I rattle them off, your listeners are like, yeah, of course, that makes sense. But now I challenge your listeners to, how often did you smile today? How often did you get in the car and smile? Did you wake up and smile? Did you get in the shower and smile? Did you get in bed and smile? Did you get in the office and smile? Right? So that's my point, is be deliberate and thoughtful about how often you smile, because smile makes you feel better, makes the world around you feel better. How about engaging with strangers? Everyone has a story. People want to talk. They want to interact. There have been so many studies about how talking to strangers and engaging them generates chemicals in the brain and makes you happier, makes them happier. When you sit down on the plane, do you talk to somebody? When you're getting a cup of coffee, do you engage with the barista? When you're standing in line, do you show respect for the people in front of you? These are the types of small things that make a big difference.
Very well said. I think that most people equate generosity with money, right? But really, it's about time and energy that you can give other people. That doesn't cost you anything. So I just love that. Some of the amazing things that I've done for myself that has helped me become a more open-minded person is, I remember taking, I think, $30 or something one day. And I went to the mall, and that was back when malls were a thing. So maybe like 10 years ago or something. Nowadays, the mall landscape is changing quite a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt.
But I remember going to the mall, and I remember saying, okay, I've got $30 to give just to random people, like somehow. So my assignment was, and I have to admit that I was not very creative at this, but my assignment was just to give it away somewhere. So what I did was I ended up dropping two $10 bills, or I think two fives or something, in random places that were visible just in the mall in general, as an act of generosity, like clearly in a conspicuous place that was meant to be there for someone to pick up. It wasn't like it was accidental. Like someone who would pick this up would be like, oh, someone meant to put this here. And then I went to like a Starbucks or something, and then I was the only one there, and I was like, look, here's $10, just keep using this for the next customers until it gets used up. And they were happy to do that. And that felt amazing, right? Like just doing those small, simple things. It didn't cost very much money. You could smile back at people. You can have a conversation, and do all these little things. And my energy shift for that entire week, Scott, completely changed. And so after that point in time, I was just completely hooked on that. So I love this positivity, doing the small things that really add up over time. So I think that's a beautiful thing. Now, you mentioned before inside some of our conversation that not everything is perfect all the time, right? Maybe one of our listeners is having an issue and they need your superpower of making the world a happier place, or maybe they're going through a difficult time right now. Can you talk about how you can maintain your positive attitude and outlook and energy? Maybe a tip or technique from your book that you can pull out for people that are having a really difficult time right now.
Yeah, so I'd say that happiness is a relative scale, not an absolute scale. So it's not about reaching 10 on the happiness meter. It's right now, as you've pointed out, I'm just going to use an analogy. I'm at a 1, right? So or maybe I'm at a -1. So how do I move from -1 to 0, -1 to 1, -1 to 2? And again, it starts with small things. So even as I'm dealing with a major setback, I'm dealing with something that's very difficult, you could still smile. And your answer may be, well, it just doesn't feel the same. I got it, but I bet it feels a little bit better than not smiling. You could find ways to laugh. You could find humor. And obviously the response back is, well, wait a second, Scott, I just told you I'm having a really rough time. I'm in a bad place. How am I going to find humor? So one of the principles is funny things are everywhere. And in the book, I tell this story about, I mentioned to you before, my father passed away about 17 years ago, and I was at the funeral. And if you think about some of the lowest moments of your life, to be at your father's funeral is probably pretty high on the lowness scale, if you know what I mean. And I was at the funeral overlooking the casket. The casket was open. It was before everyone came in. It was myself, my brother, a couple of the immediate family. I'm looking down, and all of a sudden my phone rings. So I'm looking at that. Everyone's crying. The phone rings, and people are startled, right? I know already people are thinking he couldn't remember to shut his phone. Oh, that's so embarrassing. I can't believe it. You go through all the litany of negativity. Again, at my worst moment, phone rings. Hello, Dad? What's up? Where are you? What are you doing? People didn't know what to do. They looked at me and started. There was a pause, and then just like you like thought for a minute. You're like, wait, is this cool to laugh or not? And people started laughing. It was a mix of laughing and crying, I admit. But look, no one was worse off. Dad certainly didn't mind. I assure you of that. I give that example as even in your worst moment, I would put that as one of the worst moments of my life, looking down at my father in his final minutes before he's about to be buried. I found a way to laugh. I found a way to make the room laugh around me. I found a way to smile. Then I went on to deliver a eulogy where I talked the key themes in the eulogy, the first few paragraphs were happiness and gratefulness. I'm so happy you're all here to join me. I am grateful that my father had a heart attack 25 years earlier, lived so long. He saw me get married. He saw me have children. He saw me buy a house. Wow, am I lucky. Happiness, gratefulness, laughing and smiling on the worst day of my life.
Yeah, I like the fact that it all started with some humor. And did you find that kind of set the stage for you to be able to be more, because it's like a compound effect, right? If you start off or give yourself permission to be happy, even in the toughest of situations, I'm picking up on the fact that you actually turned it into a positive day for everyone. And
No doubt.
because you had the platform and you had the power that day to really express your feelings, you were able to become a force of light for everyone in that particular moment. And the amount of energy amplification that you got for positivity in the world was just incredible at that moment. So maybe you have something to say about amplifying that. I'm not sure if you want to comment anything more on that.
I think it's so one of the things you just said in terms of setting the tone, you have the ability to create that energy level, set that tone. It's another tool I talk about in the book in terms of, and here's a great takeaway for your listeners that I share in the book. And it's such a simple idea. It's amazing when I talk about it, people shake their head. And I will tell you to this day, I've gotten so many emails and texts about people that have implemented this and said they've actually so simple, but changed their perspective. Here you go. Derek, do you remember what your first thought was when you woke up this morning?
Yes.
What was it?
It was last day of early meetings for a couple of months, right? I was very tired because I woke up at about 4:30 this morning to get ready for a 5 a.m. meeting because I'm in Japan and there's business in the US. So I woke up thinking, boy, I can do this. One last day. Yeah, that's what I thought.
So that's great. And you had a positive experience. When I ask that question to people, I will tell you about 60 to 70% of the time, people can't remember. They give me a vague, I don't know. I probably opened my eyes and I was like, it's Tuesday and I'm tired, right? It's a vague sort of answer. And I call those the blurry glasses. That's how most people will wake up. Unfortunately, I'd say a third of people wake up with really muddy glasses. So you have the chance to reach over to your table, and I always do this and put on. Unfortunately, there's the blurry glasses, there's the muddy glasses, oh, I'm tired, it's cold, it's dark, I don't feel like getting out of bed, I have so much to do. I tell people it's so easy if you're just deliberate to reach over, and here I'll use the real glasses, put on clear glasses, wake up, open your eyes, and deliberately and proactively, yes, it's Thursday. It's a great day. I'm so grateful and happy. I'm going to go down and make coffee. I'm grateful to have someone I love next to me in bed. I'm grateful my child is in the other room. I'm grateful for the roof over my head. I have a chance to talk to Derek today. Today's going to be a great day. 10 seconds. I was grateful for 8 things. Start the day with clear glasses. Like there's a great Henry Ford quote that everyone uses over and over again. So I'll just do it as well. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. So if you're waking up with those muddy glasses, you're setting the tone for a miserable day. If you're waking up with those blurry glasses, you aren't setting a roadmap. If you wake up with those clear glasses, you're giving yourself a chance to steer, as you said, steer the conversation and set the tone for the direction you're heading in. Now I'll take off my clear glasses.
That was awesome. I love it. What a great technique. It's very much, it's like it's a very applicable gratitude practice that anyone can do.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people may think that it's like this new wave-ish type of thing. I'm not going to do that to my I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to wake up and embarrass myself. And you know what though? That's fine. But the truth of the matter is, what do you have to lose? You can always go back to doing what you did before.
Right.
So just give it a shot. Have an open
It's
mind, because
so easy.
this stuff works. And so I love these very practical tools. And so I'm excited for our listeners to have a chance to get your book, because I can tell that you've given this a lot of thought and you have a lot of experience in finding applicable things that are really helpful, really deep, useful tools. So that's really great. Now, I want to go back a little bit. I want to peel a layer from the onion again and talk about how your superpower, which is obviously making the world happier, if more people were happy, can you talk about what you think that means for people's 3 degrees of freedom, for their location freedom, their financial freedom, and their time freedom? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious, like what your interpretation of that would be when people are happier.
So to me, again, you may get mad at me, but I'm spinning your questions around, and that financial freedom, that freedom of location, that freedom of your time creates that greater happiness. So now, if you know that as a goal, how do you get there? Get out that goals grid I talked to you about. How am I going to work toward that freedom of time? How am I going to work toward that freedom of location? How am I going to work toward that financial freedom? Because I know it's going to lead to greater happiness. The two concepts, mine and yours, are so inextricably linked. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's almost like we should jointly write the next book.
There we go. I love it. I love that. That's very cool. Awesome. Maybe let's talk about someone who's looking to make a major change in their life currently, right? Whether it's career or a personal change. Um, Based on your philosophy, which is the life is too short philosophy, maybe you can provide one more tool for our audience to help them make this decision, or help them frame the decision in a way that's healthy for them in the long term, or something that maybe they need to ask themselves. Do you have any advice for people that are in this point in time right now?
Yeah, so I would tell them I'd start with mindset. So one of the principles, I think it's the 7th or 8th principle, is take a risk and get it done today. So take a risk and get it done today. And in that chapter and in that principle, I talk about the book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. It's written by a palliative care nurse from Australia. It's a wonderful book. And the key takeaway, so we can go through all the regrets, but that's not necessary. One sentence, one sort of concept is, on our deathbeds, it's been her observation that the biggest regret is what we didn't do. So it's not something dumb we did. It's not some mistake we made in our life. It's what we didn't do. So today, when you're listening to this in 2023, or whenever you end up listening to the reruns, today's the day to take that risk. Today's the day to get it done today. That's why I put the two together. It's not take a risk and think about it for the next 4 years. It's take a risk and get it done today. And I tell people to think about, so why don't we take risks, right? There are these two kind of nasty words, fear and risk, right? It's fear and risk. I don't want to take the risk. I'm afraid. So what if you reconceptualize those concepts and think about them differently? Think about them as, what is the worst thing that could happen? What happens if I never do? Will I look back from my deathbed and regret that? Today's the chance. Today's the day to take a chance, take that risk, eliminate that fear, move forward, and maybe it's small steps, right? So you said people are thinking about a big change in their life. Maybe it isn't that big change today, though I would challenge you, by the way, to consider that big change today. Maybe there are a couple of small steps as you think about the roadmap, that path, the goals grid to taking that chance and getting it done today.
Yes, that's great. Did you walk through a similar mental exercise for yourself as you were making these transitions from your investment banking
Absolutely.
career over to all of that? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that one of the biggest decisions in my life, which in the rearview mirror looks absolutely ridiculous, but when I left Wall Street, so I had a great job on Wall Street. I loved what I was doing. A lot of people think that the Wall Street life is a horrible life. It has its challenges, I will be honest, but I love what I was doing. I had a great team. I was working in a great company. I helped build a great business. And I had a chance to leave and partner with somebody in another part of the country. It had about, I don't know, 15 or 16 employees at the time. And most people looked at me like, you are insane. You're leaving one of the best companies in the world and a great platform to try this. And the way I got there was to think about reframing the risk, think about fear. What happens if it doesn't work out? If it doesn't work out, I was good at what I did. Actually, I was really good at what I did, and I can make my way back. I could try something different. I'm young. There are other opportunities. What is the worst that could happen? It's a complete bust. What are the odds that it's a complete bust? On a risk-adjusted basis, as I went through that math in my head. And by the way, I was still scared. Now it sounds easy to sit back and say, oh yeah, I reassess the risk. It's always easy in the rearview mirror, but I'm so grateful I did. It was one of the best decisions I made at the time. It was one of the scariest decisions.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've got a wife and you've got a newborn,
I had
right?
kids,
At
yep,
that
yep,
point in
yep.
time. That's a very tough thing to do, especially because you're trying to help your family out. And it's not just you anymore that you're making these decisions for. I love that you're walking this talk and giving the advice that you've already used yourself. And so I couldn't agree more that taking a big goal and breaking it down into manageable pieces is the way to go. And then start thinking about things in terms of how much choices are you opening up for yourself later on. And I think you inherently knew that when you made this transition, that like, as I detach myself and add more people to the business to help support me so that there's partners now and I have less responsibility, or maybe I have the same responsibility but less duties, that's enabling the choices. That's enabling the 3 degrees of freedom. Your location freedom opens up now, and your time freedom opens up. And then in some cases, you may even do better with partners, right? You may have a smaller piece of the pie if you're talking about equity ownership in that traditional way that I think about it as a real estate investor, but your pie may be bigger. And so those are the types of things that I love to ponder about and listen to our guests' approach. And Scott, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your philosophy and your very intimate details about your life and how you got to where you did. But before we go, we have the rapid round, which is the 6 questions that we ask every one of our guests. And so if you're ready, we're going to rapidly ask them to you.
There we go.
They're meant to be answered in about 30 seconds or less. So I think we can get this. Are we good?
All 6 in 30 seconds, huh?
All 6. No.
Oh, 30 seconds each. Okay.
Seconds. Yeah.
I don't know how fast
you ready to
talk.
I was going to say, man, 5 seconds is ambitious. I should probably ask someone to see if there's someone for up to the challenge. And if there's anyone, I'm sure it would be you, but let's jump into the rapid round.
See what I can do.
Number 1, name any resource that was or is essential in your journey to pursue your 3 degrees of freedom.
My wife.
Okay, that's beautiful. And that's because of the perspective she gave you, or because of the support, or everything?
The growth together, the learning. She has enabled so much of what I've been able to accomplish, and having her on as a partner that's supportive. It's much harder to take chances to do whatever you're going to do in life if you don't have a partner to support you.
Yeah, unbelievable. And then to be able to share those experiences with someone, that's where it's at. Okay, number 2, if you woke up and your business was gone and you had $500, a laptop, a place to live, and some food, what do you think you would do first to rebuild?
Ooh. Stumped there. I'd like to write another book. So we'll go with write another book. I'm going to write another book because you're giving me the computer, you're giving me food so I could survive. I'd have to write fast on $500, to be honest with you, but I'd love to write another book. And that's probably the next move.
I love it. That's great. Yeah. Getting your message solidified and getting it out there, ready to disseminate. Number 3, what does your self-reflection and your goal setting practice look like on a daily basis, if you have it on a daily basis?
I absolutely do. I think goals are so vitally important. I talk about the goals grid every single day. The day before, so tonight, I will write down, I will first see what I haven't accomplished for today. I'll move that to tomorrow's list, and then I'll set off another list, and I'll number and prioritize them, giving some thought to what has to get done and what order they need to get done in, and time constraints. And then I love crossing them off. I think there's a great psychological effect of crossing things off. In fact, I will admit, most people won't do this, that if I had a goal in mind, I didn't write it down, I just did it, I will write it down and cross it off because I'll feel better about it.
Same here, man. That's exactly me. I love that. Except for me, I do it in Asana. So it's the digital version of clicking the complete button and then watching the task
Perfect.
vanish, right? Which is really fun too, by the way. Anyway, all right. Number 4, what are the core work habits that you most attribute to your success?
Attitude is
Mm.
100% of my success. I fundamentally believe that I'm no smarter than anybody else. I like to think I work harder, but I don't. You can't replicate my attitude, my perspective, my how I approach everything. We didn't talk a lot about it, but even in my early days of investment banking, it was a tough business, and I was so happy and so great, truly grateful. Like I couldn't believe. I pinched myself. Like, wait a sec, they hired me? Really? This is unbelievable. And I think that that was directly correlated to my longevity on Wall Street, to my success on Wall Street, and where I am today. I love to surround myself with very positive people. I think it's the biggest defining attribute in someone's career.
I love that you said this. My mentor told me that being positive and having the attitude is akin to open-mindedness and being able to stick with something for a long time until you get to where you need to get to. If you're not positive or not open-minded and have a low attitude, you just quit everything, right? And then nothing
Yep,
ever gets done because nothing in life worth getting is easy. I hate
no
to
doubt.
say that. Like it totally is the truth. Although I'm sure people out there who are AI experts maybe have something different to say about that because that is changing the world also. So we'll see.
No doubt.
Anyway, all right. Number 5. What books do you recommend to people to help jumpstart their success in addition to yours?
Oh, I don't know if there are others besides mine. Look, there are a lot of them. I'll stick with the last few I read. Right now, I'm reading The Atomic Habit, which I think is great. Start with Why is great. Life is in the Transitions is an interesting book that has really made me
Interesting.
think. That's one that's probably not high on people's lists. I just finished The Power of Regret. The Happiness Advantage by Sean
Oh
Achor is a
yeah,
great
Sean Anchor.
book. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
great
mean,
book. Yeah.
I love reading, although I will tell you now I'm really into listening to books, but I'll listen to probably 2 books a month. I love it. I
Love it.
absolutely love it. And I tie it to running. I love to run. So I go out, I run, I listen to a book, and I'm making the most of every minute.
Bingo. Yeah, I was just about to ask you how you consume all of those. And so that makes sense when you're out there running, training for your next marathon. I love it. Very cool. Yeah, one book that I do want to recommend to you if you haven't heard of it yet is The Gap and the Gain.
Okay.
Phenomenal book.
Know that. Okay.
This book is by Dan Sullivan, the same guy who wrote Who Not How,
Okay.
and it's a fantastic book about making decisions based out of abundance and not scarcity. I don't want to ruin it because it's such a fantastic audiobook, and the audiobook is actually better than the written one because you get to hear interviews with Dan Sullivan also that's in between the
And
chapters.
what was
So
it? What was
definitely it's called The Gap and the Gain.
All right, I gotta remember that. I'm gonna write that
Yeah,
down.
please do. And then I'm going to reach out to you and see how that went for you. You're going to
All
love it.
right.
All right. Last question that I got for you today, Scott. What tool or process has become one of your most important time, money, or energy saving ninja magic tricks that you use every single day?
It's got to be the goals grid. It's got to be setting out goals and prioritizing goals. I think we spend, so in the book, I talk about how many minutes we have left. And I know you want me to keep this 30 seconds, so I won't go too long, but you have a finite number of minutes left. You don't know what they are. I tell people, picture a wine barrel with gold coins in it, right? So every time you do something, you reach in the barrel, you take out a gold coin. And I tell people, you don't know how many coins are in that barrel, and there are coins leaking out the bottom of the barrel. Stop the leak,
Yep.
reach in, and know what you're doing with your minutes. Setting goals, crossing them off, following a roadmap is the best way to accomplish what you want to do and to be efficient. And I did that in
Sounds
less than 30
fantastic.
seconds.
You did. That's awesome. And I'm also guilty too, because I just get curious and I want to ask a whole bunch of follow-up questions. But anyway, Scott, this has been amazing. I knew this was going to be a fantastic conversation from the beginning, even before we hit record. But man, great to have you on the show. Before we go, can you tell the listeners a little bit about how they can find out more about your world, when your book is coming out, and just how people can interact with you if they need to get some support or find what you're up to out
Absolutely.
in the world.
That's wonderful. You can find out more about me, the book, my speaking at lifeistooshortguy.com. That's lifeistooshortguy.com. The book is out. It came out in January of this year. It is an Amazon bestseller. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it at barnesandnoble.com. You can find it in some local bookstores, or you can send me an email and I'd be happy to send you an autographed copy. My email is scott@scottewhite.com. That's scott@scottewhite.com. Lifeistooshortguy.com is the website.
Wonderful. And so for all of you listeners out there, please note that we'll be putting a website up for this episode specifically that's got all of the resources that are linked here, including all of Scott's links that he provided to us during the production of this podcast, so that you can click into his website and his book and all of that great stuff. So that should be easily available to you on our website at elevateequity.org/podcast. And you'll be able to find Scott's attractive mug on the webpage. You just go ahead and click that. Just want to thank you, audience member, as well, for listening to this podcast. So wherever you're listening or watching, please like, subscribe, engage, comment. We want to appease the algorithm gods so that we can get more listeners like you. And we can also get some more incredible guests like Scott on the show and help to bring forward the message of the 3 degrees of freedom and alignment with it from every different angle. And we just are here to serve. We want to make sure that you guys have everything that you need to move forward in life with full intention. And just want to thank you for listening. And Scott, thank you once again for coming on the show. This was a killer conversation. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so very much, Derek.
All righty. You guys have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next time. Take care.